Hi everyone, Dr. Carnahan here. A few of you have reached out to me with some questions regarding our first assignment this week, the photo gallery exercise. So I just want to spend a few minutes and hopefully clear up any concerns you have and address any questions that you may have about the assignment. So first of all, when you go into the week 3 area in the content section, you should be able to click in on the photo 1 gallery exercise. And this page provides all of the information you should need to know about the assignment, including the description, components, functionality, requirements, etc. Focus in on the functionality itself. This is what's expected in terms of overall functionality for the exercise that you'll be turning in. The project requirements talk about the files that you'll need, submission requirements, etc. Let me know if you have any questions on any of these sections. Helpful resources are important. You are going to be needing to understand how to create mouse events, targeting IDs in the DOM this week, creating loops, etc. So be sure to review the different resources posted here. And then finally, sourcing high resolution images. These are the various different sites that you can use, and then I think there are also some links in here for software to help you resize your images. If you run into any problems with resizing, let me know. So down the very bottom, we've got the files that you need for the class. You can either download these individually or download the zip file. I'm just going to grab the zip file here and throw it on my desktop. Let's go ahead and open this. So I'm just going to rename this to EX1 for exercise 1, and I'll dump this since we don't need it anymore. So what we have in here is our file structure, our index.html file. In the JS folder, you've got your JavaScript file. And in the images folder, it's currently empty. You'll need to grab your images online, and then our style sheet, which is already pre-populated. You don't need to touch the style sheet. The only changes you may be making will be in the index.html file and the JavaScript file itself. For this exercise, I recommend getting a text editor that you're comfortable with. My personal favorite is Visual Studio Code. That's what I'm going to be using here. So let's go ahead and open Visual Studio Code. If you want to use this editor, you can Google Visual Studio Code. It's a free download. Open a new window in Visual Studio Code. So what I'm going to do here, this is my text editor, and I'm going to open the EX1 folder that I just created on my desktop. In my EX1 folder, you'll now see, if I move over here, the different file structure, the different files that are available in the project. So the first thing you're going to want to do before even jumping into the code is you're going to want to grab 5 images that we can use in this assignment. And if we scroll back up, I can't remember what size was specified. 800 by 400 ideally. So I don't know if it was listed in here, but my personal favorite place for grabbing images is unsplash.com. And all of these images are royalty free. You can just grab them directly from the site. I'm going to move this out of the way for a minute. And I'm just going to grab 5 random images. So let's go ahead and download these. All right, 5 random images. And so what I'll do is I'm going to rename these just to image 1 to 5 so that it's easy for me to reference them in my code. So I'm just going to call image 1. All right, I want to resize them, so I'm just going to open them. In the Mac, there's a preview application you can use on Windows. I think there's a Paint program that you can use to adjust image sizes. There's also free software online, which I listed in the assignment instructions. If for any reason you're having problems resizing your photos or you're having issues with the images at all, let me know and I'll just send you a copy of these and you can use them in the assignment. All right, so I've resized my images. What I want to do is dump them into my image folder. I'm just going to select these and move them over here. So now I have my 5 images available here. All right, so let's go back to Visual Studio Code, my editor. And if I look in my main index.html, we already have some code available to us. So The boilerplate code is going to have image name and things like this. First thing we want to do is we want to start changing some of this boilerplate HTML. And the easiest thing to do actually is open the HTML file in your browser so you can make changes at the same time and you can see those changes. So I'm going to go ahead and open my index.html file. And this is currently what it looks like. It's pretty blank at the minute. So what I want to do is I want to change these to my image names that I just created. So I'm just going to do image-1.jpg. If I save that, I refresh, you should see the images starting to appear. So again, I'm going to do this with the other images. And then for my default large image, I'm just going to use the first one. Save this, refresh, and it's starting to look like a real photo gallery. Obviously, we haven't implemented any of the interactivity yet, but at least we have the basic site look and feel up. So the next thing we want to do is start writing some code. And in our requirements, if I go back up here under the project functionality, we want to create a mouse event that will display a matching caption when the thumbnail image is hovered over. And in addition to that, we want to add a border to the thumbnail image when it's clicked and remove a border when another thumbnail image is clicked. So on reading this, there's two different events that are going to take place, and that's going to be a click event and a hover event. So there's two different ways you can handle event listening in JavaScript. You can create event attributes directly in your image tags in your HTML, which is probably easier to implement and it's less code in your JavaScript. The cleaner way of doing it, however, is by creating event handlers directly in your JavaScript, and that keeps your HTML tidy. Either way is completely acceptable for this class. In fact, since this is a fundamentals class, I probably recommend you just start with the basic event attributes directly in the HTML. So in JavaScript, we have several event listeners and click events, hover events, things like that, which are linked in the assignment notes themselves. If I come down to helpful resources, you've got different types of mouse events. If you click in here, there's a whole section here which explains all of the different mouse events that you can use to trigger in your HTML. So the only mouse events that we're really going to be using here are going to be two, and we're going to use on mouse down, and we're also going to use on mouse over. And that will send information over to our JavaScript code, lets it know when a mouse down or a click has occurred, or when the user has hovered over an image. So to do that, for each of our images, we just need to do on mouse down equals, and then what we want to do is we want to give it a function name that we're going to then use in our code later. So in this example, let's just use a basic function name. We'll call it select image, and we'll have to remember to create that function in our JavaScript code, which I'll cover in a minute. So let's do select image, and what I want to do is I'm going to send this whole entire object over to our JavaScript code. So whenever a mouse down event occurs, this, and when I say this, the element, including our image and the attributes and so forth, will get sent over to our JavaScript code. And the other event handler we want, or sorry, the other click event or hover event we want to add is on mouse over. And we want to then handle a hover in another function. So let's think of a function name, say hover image, right? So select image will handle our click events, and hover image will handle our hover events. So let's do hover image, and we're going to pass this. What have I done wrong here? I have missed my equals. Okay, so we have two different events that are added as attributes directly in the image tag themselves. So let's go ahead and we'll add this to all of them. All right, so we have the basic changes that we need to make to our HTML page. We shouldn't really need to make any other changes to the HTML page at this point. All of the rest of our changes are going to occur directly in our image gallery .js file. So what's that going to look like? So without giving the entire exercise away, I'll show you some basics of how you might go about setting this up. So in our image gallery JavaScript file, let's go ahead, make sure this is open. There are a few things you want to do. You want to initialize any variables that you're going to be using in your code. You're going to want to have two different functions. One is going to be select image, and the other is going to be your hover image function. All right, so I'm not going to fill everything out here, but I do want to show you how to set up basic functions and to test to make sure that we can set up a proper click event and a proper hover event. So to do that, I'm going to create basic functions. Okay, so note that I have included an argument gallery image. This is the element that will get passed through from HTML into both of these functions. If we look in our HTML file, you'll note where we had select image and we're passing this, which is the element. Same for hover image. So we can really use any argument name we want. I'm just using gallery image because it's meaningful. There is one other step we need to do in order to have this running correctly, and that is to reference our JavaScript itself in our HTML file. To do that, we use the script tag, giving it the source of our JavaScript directory and the image gallery JavaScript file itself. And then the next thing we want to do is to somehow test to see if our events are working. So to do that, what I'm going to add here is a console log which will send gallery image, which is what we're receiving to the function, out to our console so we can view it to make sure that it's working. So let's go ahead and do that. We're going to do console log gallery image. And if I go back to our HTML page and I refresh, I can go to the console by going to inspect console. And now let's see what happens if I click one of the images. What I'm getting here is the entire element for my image, which is correct. So what is happening is I'm clicking on the image. It's getting passed through as this, which is the element I've clicked on, over to my function. I'm calling the argument gallery image, but that's essentially what's getting passed in, and then I'm spitting that out in the console log. Let's do the same for hover. Okay, so I'm just going to copy the same line of code. I'm going to save. I'm going to refresh here, and if I hover, note that every time I hover, I'm getting those elements back. I note that I'm getting the correct element because it's passing this, so image 3, image 2, and so on. One more thing I want to talk about before I wrap up, and I will let you complete the rest of this assignment yourself. For your variables, you're going to need to be able to select elements from the DOM. And what I mean by that is you want to be able to select an image. You want to also be able to target your caption, thumbnails, and so forth. There are various ways to select elements from the document object model, including select element or get element by ID. There's query selector, which is my preference. Query selector works by typing in document.query selector, and with query selector you use quotes, and I can pass in an ID of any type, or I can pass in a class. And when I do that, I can store that to a variable. So you're probably going to want to use document.querySelector for initializing your variables. As for the rest of it, you're going to have to be a little bit creative, using for loop, potentially using other code as you need to in order to make this work. But what I've covered here should basically give you the fundamentals of what you need to complete this assignment. I don't want to be giving anything else away, but if there's anything I covered in this video which does not make any sense to you, please reach out and let me know. All the best of luck. Thank you.